The Ottawa Senators. Okay, today what I wanted to do was dive into an article published by Bruce Garriock on the Ottawa Sun. And here's the thing. I get a lot of people have this idea about Garriock and what he does and how he's connected to certain people in the Ottawa Senators world, and there was this idea over the past few years that pretty much Garriock would be like a mouthpiece for the organization, and, you know, things can evolve and things can grow, and I'm not going to go out there and say definitively that that's what's going on here, but he is one of the main guys on the Ottawa beat that covers the Sens, and 2 days ago, he published this article on OttawaSun.com. At the quarter mark, new faces, but it's the same old story for the Ottawa Senators. GM Steve Staios wants the answers to come from within, but if it doesn't, maybe it's time to make a significant trade. Of course, you know who it is, from the title, from the thumbnail, whom it is that we are talking about in this video, but if you had not ended up reading any of that or seeing the thumbnail, which I don't know how you could have clicked on this video otherwise, but still, let's dive into the article that Garriock writes. It opens up by talking about how the Senators arrived at the quarter game mark of the NHL season in a 4-3 loss against the Vancouver Canucks. It was the club's 5th straight loss, and this is showing no signs of stopping. It's tough when you lose a few games in a row, especially at home. We know we're better than this, said Claude Giroux. They're trying to make the playoffs for the first time in 8 years, but the results thus far have been similar to what has led the Sens to missing the postseason in the recent past. If the club doesn't dig its way out of this, it'll be another lost season. Consistency is the key, and they need to find it. To a man, they swear that with the roster assembled by Steve Staios, the team's president and head of hockey operations and GM, and head coach Travis Green behind the bench, this time it's different, and they're making strides that will lead to success. Now, here's the thing. We don't necessarily know if the Ottawa Senators are going to be able to bounce back. There are some comments from the players, ideas about how they're going to bounce back, and there are some other things talking about what Travis Green is instilling with this team. But ultimately, if you go over to the 3 takeaways section, you can read a few bigger ideas that are localized in the article. Garriock talks about how Linus Ullmark has been pretty bad, talking about how the team has not really been great defensively, and then there is an idea about the trade. Is it time for a trade? One thing we've learned about Steve Staios is that he is patient and leaves no stone unturned before making a move. NHL executives told Postmedia on Saturday that Steve Staios was kicking tires to see if there were any upgrades he could make to the Senators' roster. That's part of his responsibility. Every GM is doing their job by looking and seeing if there's anything they can do, Staios said, but I can't see one major area with this group because they've shown how they can play in a majority of games this year that need to be addressed. Ideally, Staios would like the answers to come from within. But people around the league wonder if Staios will make a move to get the players' attention. He doesn't want to make a change, but if this group doesn't get its act together, he might have to do something. We're getting to the point where many believe the time has come for Staios to strike at the core of the Senators. Let's get this out of the way immediately, though. The Sens don't trade Tkachuk because they're trying to build this team around him. Other candidates in the core could be moved, however. Many fans want Chabot dealt, but that wouldn't happen without Ottawa eating part of his $10 million salary this season. It's a charge of $8 million against the cap, and he has improved while playing with Jensen. NHL executives say, though, and this is the big part, that one name that you should keep an eye on is that of Josh Norris. He's off to a strong start this season with 8 goals and 5 assists for 13 points going into the game against the Canucks. He was moved to play with Perron and Amadio on the third line because Travis Green felt Norris might be able to help those two players produce more offensively. Norris had to go to the dressing room for repairs in the first period. Okay, Quinn Hughes, we can skip that. With a cap hit of $7.95 million through 27-28, Norris has struggled to stay healthy and is coming off a 3rd shoulder surgery. Before Norris had surgery last season, there was already talk he may be moved, and that chatter has surfaced again with the team struggling. His contract makes sense that he would be a guy that they may think about moving, a league executive said on Saturday. And because we have already spent so many minutes of this video just reading the article, there's a lot more in this, by the way, so you can go ahead and check it out yourself if you so please. Because we've spent so much time just reading, I wanted to get into the editorial side of this video, just go over my thoughts and present to you what I feel about Josh Norris, the player, because obviously, you know, my biggest critique about Josh Norris will be the hit from Quinn Hughes. Okay, maybe it's a little unfair to say that, but still, I'm a biased Canucks fan. What are you going to do? Josh Norris has been very good this season. He had himself that 14-point start in 20 games, on pace for about 58 points in a full 82-game season, which would be a career high. It wouldn't be a significant career high because he did have 55 points in only 66 games back in 2021-2022. Unfortunately, you would hope that his career would eventually stabilize itself back to being a guy who was able to get 35 goals in 66 games played, but it doesn't really seem like that's the projection anymore. I mean, with him getting sent down to a third line alongside of David Perron, okay, you can understand why that production might be slowing down a little bit, but still, Josh Norris has been off to a pretty hot start this season, especially when you compare it to what he has done in last year's worth of play and the year before that. If the Senators are in such a dire spot, though, if at some point the GM says, okay, we gotta just pull the plug on this core, it's not working, we gotta make some trades, we gotta do everything from the bottom again, who knows if Josh Norris really is that guy to go? He certainly would fetch a good return on the market, but I think since Garriock brought it up, I mean, it's interesting how trade conversations about this dude were already present when he was going through some other injury issues. And now, because the team is doing poorly, it's like, hey, once again, we can bring the idea up of this guy getting traded, because if you can trade him and get a lot of stuff in return, maybe bolster up the rest of your team and then some other areas, maybe that is a path you have to consider. And ultimately, if a team really does believe that Josh Norris can be that 30-goal guy once again, in fact, let's do the points production pace over that 21-22 season. He had 55 points in 66 games played. This season would have seen him on pace for, what is 55 divided by 66 multiplied by 82? That is a 68-point pace. And in terms of the goals, he would have been on pace for 43 goals. If anybody thinks Josh Norris is still a 40-goal scorer to be, then hey, be my guest. You could go out there and make a trade for that and have him on your payroll at $7.9 million a year till 2030. It's a beefy cap hit, but it's one that certainly fits for a guy who's able to maybe get 30 to 40 goals a year. The question is, though, is Norris going to be able to stay healthy enough to do that? And you have to really start thinking, if you get this guy, you have to put him in a spot to be able to get those points whilst also staying healthy. Not the easiest task in the world, to be honest. So if you are an Ottawa Senators fan, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments section. How do you feel about the idea of a Josh Norris trade? Do you really think this is something the Sens should go out there and consider? Or do you think it should be considered to maybe move him into a more productive position in the lineup, or try to see if you could get him going elsewhere? It's not like he's been playing poorly. I mean, he's got 4 points in his last 5 games. He's been doing fine. It's just the Senators, I would say, have been doing pretty good offensive things from the top guys. Batherson, Giroux, Tkachuk, Stützle have all been great this season, and then you have some solid defensive play out of guys like Nick Jensen and Thomas Chabot. But the team is just not finding ways to win games anymore. So the question is, where do you go from here, and is a Norris trade really the answer? I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you're a Sens fan, the article is going to be linked in the description, but the comment section is your floor. Let me know, what do you think about this entire thing? I hope you enjoyed this video. 99, and bye.